All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome back. You know how much we love diving deep into the latest in data tech? And today is no exception.
No kidding.
You guys sent in some really fascinating stuff about this thing called high-fidelity data.
Yeah, HiFi Data.
It's trying to tackle, that age-old problem of how to use data effectively without, putting sensitive information at risk.
Yeah.
And the cool part, it's not just some abstract concept. We're talking real-world applications in healthcare, finance, all sorts of things.
That's the exciting part, right? Seeing this actually in action.
Exactly. The article we've got from D-Zone, high-fidelity data, balancing privacy and usage, really lays it all out.
It's a good one. It really gets to the core of this whole dilemma, I think.
Totally. So, we're living in this world where data is king.
Right.
But using that data responsibly,
Yeah.
well, that's the tricky part.
Yeah, it's a constant balancing act, right? We want to unlock all the potential that data has to offer.
Right.
But we also need to be incredibly careful about protecting people's privacy.
You can't just throw caution to the wind.
And the traditional methods we've used for de-identification, well, they often end up sacrificing either usability or privacy. It's like you're forced to choose one or the other.
It's like trying to blur out a face in a photo, right? You might protect someone's identity, but you also lose a lot of the detail.
Exactly. And it's the same with data. If you strip away too much information, well, it becomes useless for analysis. But if you don't strip away enough, you risk exposing sensitive details. It's a tough nut to crack.
Okay, so then how does high-fidelity data, this HiFi data, actually solve this?
Okay, so the key here is that HiFi Data aims to maintain the core structure and characteristics of the original data while still protecting sensitive information. So think of it like a really sophisticated disguise. The data's true identity is hidden, but it can still be used for analysis and research.
Wow.
The article talks about faithfulness to the original features, which basically means we're not just throwing away important information in the name of privacy.
Oh, interesting. I see. So how do they actually do that, though? What's the secret sauce?
Well, there are 4 key principles, they call them pillars, that HiFi Data relies on to achieve this balance.
Okay, pillars. I like that.
Visual integrity, population integrity, statistical integrity, and then last but not least, ownership integrity.
4 pillars holding up the whole system. All right, so let's break those down one by one. Starting with visual integrity, I'm guessing that means the data needs to look right, even after it's been, transformed.
Exactly. This is actually super important.
Why is that?
For both human analysts and AI models, the visual presentation of data can have a huge impact on how easily it's understood. If you transform a phone number, for example, but it still looks like a phone number with the dashes in the right spots, even though the numbers themselves have been changed,
Wow.
It's much easier for an analyst to work with that data. And AI models, they rely on patterns and structure too.
Yeah, they need that visual consistency, right, to make sense of it all.
Right. Exactly.
And in the article, they talk about birth dates specifically, right? Even after transformation, a HiFi birth date would still look like a date.
Yep. It's all about maintaining that familiar structure and format, even while the underlying data is protected. It just makes the whole analysis process a lot smoother.
Okay, so pillar number 1. Keep the data looking right, even if the specific details have changed. Got it.
Got it.
All right, so then what about population integrity? What does that even mean in the context of data?
So population integrity, this focuses on making sure that the overall patterns and trends within a data set stay consistent after transformation.
Okay, so even if you scramble individual data points to protect privacy, the overall distribution of the data remains the same.
Exactly. It's like imagine you have a data set showing that, let's say, 60% of a certain population prefers, a certain brand of coffee.
Okay, yeah.
HiFi data transformation would make sure that 60% preference stays the same, even though the individual data points have been de-identified.
So the individual data points are like pieces of a puzzle, but they've been scrambled up to protect privacy. But when you put the puzzle together,
the bigger picture is still clear.
The overall image, that population trend, is still there. That's really neat.
It is. The article had a great example about vaccination rates. If the original data shows, let's say, a 70-30 split between vaccinated and unvaccinated people in a region, HiFi Data would make sure that ratio stays the same after a transformation.
So you're protecting individual privacy, but without losing the accuracy of those overall trends. That's pretty amazing. Okay, so we've got visual integrity, we've got population integrity. Let's move on to pillar number 3, statistical integrity. This one, I have to admit, sounds a little more complex. What's the basic idea here?
Well, statistical integrity, it's all about making sure that the mathematical relationships within the data remain accurate, even after the individual data points have been, de-identified.
Oh, okay.
So imagine you're calculating the average age of a group of people. HiFi Data would ensure that that average age stays correct, even after the individual ages have been modified to protect privacy.
So it's like the numbers might be different, but the statistical relationships between them stay true.
Exactly. And this is really crucial for things like, AI modeling, making accurate predictions, and drawing reliable conclusions from the data.
So if you were using HiFi data to train an AI, like, I don't know, to predict customer behavior or something,
Right.
that AI would be working with data that's still statistically sound, even though all those individual details about customers are masked.
Precisely.
Okay, I think I'm starting to see the magic here.
The magic of anonymized data.
All right, last but not least, let's talk about this fourth pillar, ownership integrity. I have a feeling this has something to do with, like, knowing where the data came from,
Yeah,
right?
you got it. Ownership integrity is all about keeping a very clear record of the data's origins and who's responsible for it.
Even as it goes through these transformations and stuff.
Exactly. It's about accountability and transparency. It's like having a chain of custody for data. Even if the data has been, de-identified and is moving between different systems, you can still trace it back to its source.
So you always know where it came from and who has a right to use it. That makes a lot of sense from a trust and compliance perspective.
Exactly. And it helps build that trust with individuals who are, sharing their data. They know that their data is being handled responsibly and ethically.
Okay, so we've got our four pillars: visual, population, statistical, and ownership integrity. And each one of these pillars plays a role in making sure that data stays both usable and private.
It's a pretty elegant solution when you think about it.
It really is. But I mean, how does this actually play out in the real world? I mean, where are we seeing HiFi data being used right now?
Well, there are some really interesting applications, especially in fields where data privacy is super, super sensitive, and the article highlights a few of those.
Oh, perfect. Let's hear them.
Healthcare is definitely at the top of the list.
Yeah, healthcare. Makes sense.
Think about all the potential there, right? I mean, analyzing patient data to develop new treatments or to track how diseases spread.
Right. But obviously patient privacy is absolutely crucial in that space.
Exactly. And that's where HiFi Data comes in, right?
I see, yeah.
It lets researchers study all those trends and patterns in the data without ever having access to any actual patient names or, identifying details.
Oh, that's amazing. So they get the insights they need to advance medical research, but patients don't have to worry about their personal information being compromised.
Exactly.
Like having your cake and eating it too, right?
It really is. And it goes beyond just research, too. Imagine a hospital using HiFi data to identify patients who are at a higher risk for, let's say, heart disease.
Oh, yeah?
They could intervene earlier with preventative care, which could lead to much better outcomes for those patients.
It's like having a personalized early warning system for health issues.
Right. The possibilities are pretty incredible.
They really are. Okay, so healthcare is a big one. But I know there are other areas where HiFi data is making waves. What about finance?
Finance is another one.
Yeah.
Think about it. Banks and financial institutions, they handle massive amounts of sensitive data every single day, right?
Yeah, that's true.
And HiFi data can help them enhance security, combat fraud, even improve customer service, all while protecting customer privacy.
Okay, hold on. So you're telling me they can protect my money, catch the bad guys, and still give me personalized service?
That's the idea. So imagine a bank using HiFi data to secure online transactions. Even if a hacker intercepted that data, they couldn't actually see the sensitive information because it's been transformed.
It's like putting that information in a vault, right?
Yeah.
Even if someone breaks in, they can't actually get to the good stuff.
Right.
Okay, so that's the security side. But how does HiFi data help with customer service?
Well, it lets banks analyze customer data to really understand their financial goals and needs without actually seeing any of their private information. So they could then offer more personalized advice and services.
How interesting. So instead of getting those generic marketing emails that are totally irrelevant to my life,
Exactly.
I might actually get recommendations that are, tailored to my specific financial situation.
Exactly. It's about using data to actually help customers, not just to, bombard them with irrelevant ads.
I like that. Data with a conscience.
There you go.
Okay, so I'm pretty convinced that HiFi data has the potential to really revolutionize how we handle sensitive information across industries.
I think so too.
But, I mean, let's be real. Every new technology comes with its own set of challenges and limitations, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's not a silver bullet.
So what are some of the challenges that we need to be aware of when it comes to HiFi data?
Well, one of the big ones is finding that right balance between privacy and utility.
Right. Because if you transform the data too much in an attempt to protect privacy.
You might end up with a data set that's just not useful for analysis anymore.
Right. It's like redacting a document so heavily that there's nothing left to read.
Exactly. So it's a delicate balancing act. You have to consider the specific data you're working with, what you're planning to use it for,
Yeah.
and of course the level of privacy protection that's needed.
So it's not a one-size-fits-all solution.
Not at all. And then of course there's always the risk of, attacks and data breaches, even with HiFi data in place.
Right. Because no system is perfect.
Exactly. So we always need to be thinking about security and how to stay ahead of the bad guys. It's like an ongoing arms race.
So it's not just about building a strong fortress. It's also about having a really good security team that's constantly on the lookout for potential threats.
Exactly. And part of that is being transparent about how HiFi data works and, what the limitations are.
Oh, yeah. Transparency is so important, especially when it comes to something as sensitive as data privacy.
Right. People need to understand what's being done with their data and how it's being protected. That's how you build trust.
Okay, transparency check. What else?
Well, we also need to remember that different regions have different privacy regulations.
Oh, right, like GDPR and CCPA, the whole legal jungle out there.
It is. So it's crucial to make sure that HiFi data practices are actually compliant with all those regulations wherever the data is being used.
So it's not just a technical challenge, it's a legal and regulatory one as well.
Yeah.
It sounds like you need a whole team of experts to really implement HiFi data effectively, right?
That's for sure. You need data scientists to build the technical solutions, privacy experts to make sure everything is ethical, legal professionals to navigate the regulations. It's a group effort.
It's like building a house, right?
Yeah.
You need architects, engineers, construction workers.
Exactly. And everybody needs to be working together to make sure the house is safe and livable. But even with the best intentions, there's always a chance that things could go wrong.
Right.
So it's important to think about those potential pitfalls and unintended consequences.
Okay, so what are some of those potential downsides that we should be thinking about?
Well, one concern is that even with all the safeguards, HiFi data could end up being used to create even more powerful surveillance systems.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it's like you're giving, a surveillance state a sharper set of eyes, even if those eyes are like technically privacy aware.
Yeah, that's a valid concern. We have to be really careful about how this technology is used and who has access to it. The last thing we want is to create tools that, erode privacy instead of protecting it.
It's a slippery slope for sure. And I mean, it's not just about surveillance either. There's also the risk of bias and discrimination. What if HiFi data is used to create algorithms that, perpetuate existing inequalities or unfairly target certain groups of people?
That's a huge one. We need to make absolutely sure that HiFi data is used to promote fairness and equity. That means carefully evaluating the data that's used to train these algorithms, testing for potential biases, and putting safeguards in place to prevent discrimination.
So it's not just about the tech itself. It's about the values and the ethics that guide how that tech is developed and used.
Exactly. We can't just assume that technology is inherently neutral. We need to be having these conversations about the potential risks of HiFi data and, establishing some clear ethical guidelines for its use.
Ethical guidelines, regulations. I mean, it sounds like we need a whole multi-pronged approach here. We need public awareness campaigns. We need ongoing monitoring. A whole system to make sure this technology is used responsibly.
I couldn't agree more. It's a shared responsibility. We need everyone involved, data scientists, policymakers, ethicists, the public. We all need to be working together to get this right.
It really does feel like we're at a crossroads with data privacy and HiFi data. It's like this really powerful tool with the potential to change everything, but it's up to us to decide how it's used.
Right. We have to make sure that this power is used for good, for progress, not for, harm or exploitation.
It's about protecting people, not just data.
Exactly.
And it's about empowering individuals to have more control over their own information.
Giving them a voice in how their data is used. That's the ultimate goal.
Absolutely. Well, we've covered a lot of ground today. We've talked about the 4 foundational pillars of HiFi data. We've explored its potential benefits and risks. It's a complex topic, but it's a fascinating one.
Yeah, it's definitely an area to watch. Things are evolving so quickly.
They really are. But to all of you listening, I want to leave you with this. As data becomes even more intertwined with our lives, it's more important than ever to be informed, to be engaged, to ask questions. Don't be afraid to challenge the status quo and demand better data practices from the companies and organizations that you interact with. The future of data privacy, it's in our hands.
It's true. It's up to all of us to shape this future.
Well, that's it for today's deep dive into the world of HiFi data. Thanks for joining us, everyone. We'll catch you next time.